let's uncover the secrets to one of the most infamous vaults in Fallout history. Another vault that released psychoactive drugs that created murderers out of the best men and women. And two vaults that are both integral parts of the games that they come from. Welcome back to another vault video in a series where we plan to cover every single vault mentioned in any official lore in depth. That includes all canon, non-canon, and everything in between. If you're just joining us, we've covered vaults 0 all the way up to 96 in these videos, which is a lot, so you definitely want to go check those out. Also, consider subscribing, because you won't want to miss out on future vaults in the series. We have one more video left after this one, and then the series comes to an end. And the vaults we have left are some of the most crazy. If you guys find yourself enjoying the video, consider liking it. It helps out the video and the channel a bunch. Enjoy. Vault 101. A classic and favorite among Fallout fans. But let's be honest, most don't even know what the experiment was in 101, what the entire purpose of the vault consisted of outside of James and the Lone Wanderer's tale. Vault 101 was built in the 2060s, along with the other vaults in Washington, D.C. Originally, the Vault 76 Overseer was supposed to take charge of Vault 101, but she turned down the role to stay in Appalachia.
Yes. Experimenting on Vault residents was ethically wrong, but the goal of finding the most suitable people to repopulate, to understand humanity pushed to the extremes, what if that was the only way for us to survive? We can't save everyone. That's what they always told us. And I still think, they were right. Vault Tech found out that I knew. I thought I was going to be fired or arrested, but instead they confided in me. Vault 76 was going to be a control vault, no experiment. I was so relieved, but they told me I was going to be assigned to Vault 101 in Washington, D.C. I had to leave West Virginia, my people, behind. I couldn't let them do that, no matter what it took.
The vault's main purpose was to stay sealed forever as part of an experiment to study how an overseer would lead a community that never opened its doors. Despite this plan, Vault 101 opened multiple times, breaking its original rules. These breaches allowed rad roaches to infest the vault, making it vulnerable to even bigger infestations over time. One of the main jobs of vault security became dealing with these pests. The vault was equipped with everything it needed to keep running long term, like spare parts for its water processor. However, it didn't receive a GEC, a device meant for people living on the surface. Right after the Great War in 2077, Vault 101's first overseer made sure no one would ever leave by convincing everyone the outside world was a lifeless, nuclear wasteland. To sell this idea, they used fake radio broadcasts recorded before the war, making people believe survival was only possible inside the vault. The first overseer died of natural causes in 2127, but left a successor ready to continue the experiment. The second overseer stuck to the isolationist rules, and even tried to get senior vault residents to help with the experiment. The vault's mantra became, "We're born in the vault, we live in the vault, and we die in the vault," reinforcing their sealed-off way of life. Before 2241, a different overseer took a bold step and supported contact with the outside world. They formed a survey team led by Ann Palmer to explore beyond the vault and study potential mutations. The team ventured out, reaching Megaton before February 10th, 2241. When they returned, they analyzed their findings, including a giant ant they killed, and then adjusted their plans based on what they learned. Two members of the team, Lewis and Agnes Taylor, stayed in Megaton to keep communication open and survey the area further. Agnes came back to the vault around 2258. The overseer before the current overseer, Alphonse, disappeared after another expedition into the capital wasteland went wrong. Alphonse Almodovar became the overseer of Vault 101 sometime before 2258, turning it into a strict police state with a hardline policy of isolation. Around 2258-2259, James and his child, later known as the Lone Wanderer, arrived at Vault 101 seeking refuge. James offered to work as the vault's doctor in exchange for entry, and Alphonse agreed. To keep their origins secret, James raised the Lone Wanderer to believe that they had been born in the vault. During Alphonse's rule, Jonas Palmer became James's assistant in the late 2260s. Alphonse hoped that Jonas would provide a balance to the vault's strict system. We also have a bunch of events that took place in the next few years that we gathered throughout the vault terminals. They aren't super important, but they're kind of interesting, so we'll go through those quickly. Between 2265 and 2267, a girl escaped Vault 101 and made it to Megaton, where she left her armored Vault 101 jumpsuit with Moira Brown, but then never returned to retrieve it.
I'm pretty sure I remember a girl coming into town with that about 12 years ago. She didn't know a thing about the wastes, and I knew she'd get herself hurt without some sort of protection, so I offered to armor her vault suit. Never saw her again. Probably died out there, poor thing.
In July 2268, the water purifier broke but was quickly repaired by Stanley Armstrong. The next day, Butch Deloria, Wally Mack, and Paul Hannon Jr. began brainstorming names for their gang, eventually settling on the Tunnel Snakes. In 2272, another resident escaped to Megaton and shared with Colin Moriarty that vault dwellers were brainwashed to believe the Overseer was the only source of truth.
Ah, I see. You know, I heard about the brainwashing that goes on down there. From some other fella, escaped, 5 years back. All hail the Overseer, we're born in the vault, we die in the vault, and all that other assorted lunacy. Kid, you've got better programming than our own Deputy Weld. You'd best wise up quick. Wouldn't want anyone taking advantage of you,
And last, on August 17, 2077, James used a radroach infestation as his chance to escape Vault 101. During the chaos, several residents died. Agnes Taylor had a heart attack, Floyd Lewis and Vicky Hannon were killed, and Paul Hannon Jr. was severely injured. Jonas Palmer was then interrogated about James' departure and was later killed by Stevie Mack. The security team was ordered to contain the infestation and capture the Lone Wanderer for questioning. Mata Almodovar, the Overseer's daughter and the Lone Wanderer's best friend, woke them up and explained what was happening. As the Lone Wanderer tried to escape, Tom and Mary Holden debated leaving too, while officers fought off the radroaches. Butch Deloria, in a panic, begged the Lone Wanderer to help save his mother, who was being attacked in their room. Meanwhile, Amata was being interrogated by her father and Officer Mack. The whole thing is a little chaotic. At the vault's entrance, Amata said goodbye to the Lone Wanderer just as officers Park and Wolf arrived. The vault door opened and the Lone Wanderer stepped out into the Capital Wasteland for the first time in their memory. After James's escape, the Overseer became even more oppressive, but the incident revealed to the dwellers that life outside the vault was possible. This realization caused division and unrest within Vault 101. A rebellion led by Amata and a group of younger vault dwellers formed within Vault 101. They took over the clinic and pushed for the opening of the vault, interacting with the outside world, starting limited trade, and making trips into the wasteland. On the other side, the Overseer insisted on keeping the vault sealed forever, sticking to the original experiment. Meanwhile, Butch Deloria wanted to leave the vault entirely and live on the surface. During this standoff, the vault received a radio transmission from the Enclave. They claimed to have had access to the vault before, but said that their password was no longer working. The Overseer, committed to isolation, refused to let them in, worried about exposing the vault to outside dangers or losing control of its mission. With his focus on stopping the rebels from opening the vault, the Overseer ignored the Enclave's demands. In response, Amata sent an emergency broadcast to the Capital Wasteland, calling for the Lone Wanderer to return and help resolve the growing conflict.
This is an automated distress message from Vault Tech. Vault 101. Message begins.
It feels like you left home a long time ago, but I know you're still out there. I just hope you're still alive to hear this. Things got worse after you left. My father's gone mad with power. If you can hear this, please stop looking for your dad and help stop mine. I changed the door password to my name. If you're hearing this, and if you still care enough to help me, you should remember it.
Whatever happens in this conflict is unknown. We don't know what the canon is beyond this point. In reality, the experiment that was supposed to take place in Vault 101 never really occurred. People were leaving and coming back to the vault constantly. 101 essentially became another control vault in a way, but the events that took place really changed the landscape with the residents forever.
Vault 106 was completed in just 5 years, from March 2064 to December 2069. It was built to house 107 people, 95 test subjects, and 12 researchers, with a planned operation of 12 years and 3 months. The vault ran on a Think Machine 2800 computer and was powered by rock-solid geothermal energy with backup from a General Atomics nuclear plant. If you're confused on what a Think Machine computer is, then I don't blame you. We have barely any information on them, and the only thing we have is the company being referenced on the Citadel terminals. The company called Think Machine made computers for both Vault 106 and 112. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. Sorry for the tangent. Dr. Albert Laris, head of Vault Tech's Psychological Research Department, was appointed overseer. To maintain secrecy, all information about the experiment was strictly controlled by Dr. Laris. The experiment itself was horrifying. 10 days after the vault was sealed, psychoactive drugs were released into the air circulation system. This process, called Control Sequence 46-2A, involved careful preparation by the vault's security and medical teams. At 3:30 p.m., the drug was released, and by 4 p.m., the emission was complete. The residents were never told about the drug, and any unusual effects were blamed on filtration issues. The results were catastrophic. Many residents fell into a dreamlike hallucinatory state, while others became erratic and violent. The security chief tried to manage the chaos and urged unaffected residents to find safety, but the security team was overwhelmed. The vault descended into madness, and its population was lost to the effects of the drugs. For the next 200 years, Vault 106 became a death trap. Travelers and scavengers who entered fell victim to the lingering effects of the drugs, wandering the ruins in a daze, convinced they were the vault's original inhabitants. When the lone wanderer comes to the vault, they see doubles or triples of their father and Amada in two separate occasions while they are affected by the drug. Butch, Wally, and Paul are also seen as apparitions at one point. Killing the apparitions results in the loss of karma. If you try to talk to your dad as an apparition, he disappears. Not much else can really be said about this vault. Its collapse happened so early on that events never really took place after that. The effects of the drugs persisted for centuries, turning the vault into a haunted, surreal trap. Anyone who ventured inside became a victim, reliving the same madness and hallucinations as the original inhabitants, effectively becoming part of the vault's cursed legacy.
Haha, Gary!
Vault 108 is located in the Capital Wasteland, notable for being the only vault in Fallout 3 without a functioning terminal. Located south of Canterbury Commons and northeast of the Corvega factory, construction of Vault 108 began in March 2061 and abruptly halted in December 2069 due to a work stoppage. Designed to accommodate 475 residents for 38 years, Vault 108's experiment centered on leaving most standard positions unfilled, with only 3 roles explicitly assigned: Zachary K. Jameson as Chief of Staff, Jarek Maddox as Chief of Security, and Nathan Oregon as a Morale Officer. The experiment also included an intentional power failure. The primary power supply was set to fail after 20 years, halfway through the vault's intended active period. The backup power provided by a steam whistle mini geothermal unit was insufficient to sustain the entire vault, a fact known by the scientists. Additionally, Vault 108 was fitted with 3 times the standard amount of defensive weaponry and lacked entertainment facilities. The chosen overseer, Brody Jones, was selected specifically because he had a genetic predisposition for a rare type of cancer, with a projected life expectancy of just over 3 years from the start of the project. As the scientists noted, these 2 events should combine to allow a proper catalyst that allows this project to continue as planned, whatever that meant. In addition to the power and leadership experiments, the Vault scientists conducted a series of cloning tests. A corrupted holotape found in the cloning lab describes their attempts to repeatedly clone a man named Gary. Unfortunately, each clone immediately turned hostile toward non-clones, with each iteration becoming more violent. After the 53rd clone showed no improvement, the scientists faced the problem of an overcrowded observation area. Shortly thereafter, Gary 54 displayed the same aggression, even injuring Dr. Peterson during an examination. The staff then decided to destroy some of the clones to make room for many more tests. When the lone wanderer finds Vault 108, only Gary clones and a few creatures remain alive. The vault itself is in a state of severe disrepair, with water leaks, rust, and collapsed sections. Upon arrival, the doors found ajar. There are 3 main areas to explore: the entrance, the living quarters, and the cloning lab. The living quarters and the cloning lab are occupied by a dozen hostile Gary clones, each speaking with varying vocal inflections.
Gary! 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 Gary!
Most of them are unarmed, though Gary 1, Gary 25, and Gary 32 wield knives or lead pipes. The clones can also pick up weapons found throughout the vault. The reactor area is blocked by debris, making it inaccessible, and the Overseer's office remains sealed off. Notably, the Overseer's office has a rectangular window, unlike the standard vault windows found in other regions. The entrance area is also inhabited by a colony of mole rats. But let's get back to the clones, the Garys, the true stars of Vault 108. Although they mostly only say Gary, I have my own theory that they might be smarter than they let on. For instance, upon death, they're known to shout no in protest. If you remain hidden and listen closely, you can even hear two Garys exchange greetings like morning or hey, similar to regular Wastelanders. And then there's also a cut holotape that tells of a Gary being interrogated, seemingly playing dumb, which leads to a brutal death.
Hey, Gary?
Listen, son, I know Marilla was rough on you. I'm sorry, I really am.
Gary? And Gary?
Right, you can drop the act now. I'm not here to hurt you.
Gary?
Look, just remove the pit boy and we can part ways.
Gary! Gary!
You know what? Fuck this. Hand me that saw and turn off the recorder.
Additionally, Gary 23 was abducted by Outcast member Defender Moral and was then taken to an Outcast outpost near Bailey's Crossroads. They wanted Gary's Pip-Boy to access a simulation pod inside the facility. Initially, they tried to convince Gary to enter the pod voluntarily, but soon realized that they couldn't reason with him, leading to the cut holotape that I mentioned before. Specialist Olin eventually attempted to forcibly remove the hermetically sealed Pip-Boy, but failed, resulting in the decision to amputate Gary 23's left arm. Sadly, this led to Gary's death from hypovolemic shock. His remains can still be found in an easy locked room across from Proctor McGraw, wearing his Vault 108 jumpsuit. Unfortunately, Gary's Pip-Boy was rendered useless upon his death, as these devices only function when worn by a living individual. The Guardians of Vault 108, the Garys, never stood a chance in the unforgiving Capital Wasteland.
Aw, Gary.
Vault 109 is an abandoned, sealed-off vault surrounded by radiation and filled with it as well. Before its current state, Vault 109 had a comfortable trading relationship with Vault 84, exchanging supplies regularly. The cause of the radioactive contamination remains unknown. Vault 109 was once a very high-class vault filled with luxury goods. Many of the products inside are from Mary May, a pre-war company known for its cosmetic cases, not to be confused with Mary Kay. Other notable brands include Ticknor and Fields, a prominent American publisher that operated during the mid-19th century, publishing works by notable authors like Charles Dickens, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and Fallon's, one of Massachusetts' biggest retail brands known for selling expensive jewelry, clothing, and other luxury goods. Despite its upscale appearance, Vault 109 also housed an armory containing a Fat Man that can be acquired if the player decides to break into the vault's armory while playing Fallout the board game. Additionally, a set of T60 power armor can be obtained here. The Vault 109 tile is marked by a red tile on the board and is surrounded by radioactive terrain. When the Vault 109 tile is revealed, a monster is spawned.
Now, I can't wait for the world to end.
That's the spirit.
Ah yes, Vault 111. Maybe you've heard of it. Located overlooking Sanctuary Hills, Vault-Tec designed Vault 111 to observe the effects of long-term cryonic stasis on unsuspecting test subjects. Vault 111's staff consisted of an overseer and a small team of scientists, security guards, and facility maintenance personnel employed on a short-term basis. Test subjects were lured to Vault 111 from the nearby neighborhoods of Sanctuary Hills and Concord, once sold on the dream of safety. On the morning of the Great War, many of the residents had known that America was being bombed, causing a group to flee to Vault 111. However, a security team prevented unauthorized residents from entering, even the Vault-Tec rep who advertised the vault.
If you're in the program, step forward, otherwise return home!
A batch of survivors waited on the platform to descend, including the parents of an infant named Sean. A nuke on the horizon caused a blast all the way to Vault 111, with these particular survivors barely making it inside. Soon after, the residents were given their jumpsuits and were placed in stasis pods after being told deceitfully that the purpose of the pods was for decontamination. A Fallout 4 loading screen even states, "Those who reserved spots in Vault 111 had no idea that they would be cryogenically frozen." In fact, almost every vault was actually a secret social experiment conducted by Vault-Tec. According to Vault-Tec's standard operating procedures, Vault 111 was to remain sealed for a minimum of 180 days, after which the vault could be opened upon receipt of an all-clear signal from Vault-Tec or at the overseer's discretion. However, after the 180-day mandatory shelter period elapsed, Vault 111 received no such signal, and its staff faced dwindling supplies. Despite requests from the security staff, the overseer refused to unseal the vault door, concerned that the radiation outside the vault had not declined enough to be survivable. Shortly after, a faction led by the vault's security and support staff engaged in mutiny against the overseer in an effort to unseal the vault door and leave the vault. In response, the overseer placed the vault on lockdown and demanded all staff to hand over any food, weapons, and medicine. There is no further account of events to be found, as the logs end here on both the security terminal and the overseer's terminal. In 2277, an elusive society based in the Commonwealth known as the Institute discovered the location of the vault, along with the fact that it contained an infant whose DNA would be completely uncorrupted by post-war radiation. Seeking a source of pure human DNA to form the basis of their Generation 3 synths, they sent their agent Conrad Kellogg and 2 scientists to retrieve the infant. However, the infant was in a cryostasis pod with one of his parents. When that parent wouldn't relinquish their hold on their son, Kellogg murdered them while the other parent watched helplessly, trapped in their own pod before being placed into stasis once again. After witnessing the murder of their spouse and the kidnapping of their child, the sole survivor awakens in Vault 111 after being held in cryogenic stasis for 210 years. With the Vault Dweller's survival guide offering a tongue-in-cheek approach by mentioning, "Vault-Tec calling, we are pleased to reveal your new home underground." Despite an initially chilly reception, you may find this location to be the safest around, especially as the population has thinned out quite considerably since you were frozen. Upon accessing the Vault 111 monitoring system, they learned that all of the other subjects that had entered the vault, except for themselves, their spouse, and their child, had died of asphyxiation due to life support failure. In the Dangerous Minds quest, where we get an opportunity to kill Kellogg, loot the cybernetic brain augmentor, and delve deep into his memories, the sole survivor discovers that Kellogg had been directed not to reactivate the life support for the other residents and not to release them. 60 years later, due to an error in Vault 111, the sole survivor is released from cryostasis and escapes. However, it is later revealed that the release was in fact a personal choice made by Sean, now director of the Institute, and not a Vault-Tec system error as initially thought. Shout out to our boy Sean. Unlike other vaults, the entrance to Vault 111 not only has an atypical pneumatic hole, but also acts as a hatch which gives way to an interior elevator. The inner door opens first, followed by the hatch opening. While painted in the prelude, the vault door is rusted and dull after the Great War. There was also a security checkpoint, a feature that most other vaults lacked. Most of the other rooms in Vault 111 include a reactor room, a recreational area for Vault-Tec staff, and the Overseer's office. The vault itself is significantly smaller as compared to other Vault-Tec vaults, due to the nature of the experiment. After the release of the sole survivor, the vault shows obvious signs of neglect. Frozen mummified corpses are in the pods, skeletal remains of some of the killed occupants are scattered around the interior with signs of violence, and much of the machinery is no longer in proper working order. Radroaches have also invaded the vault and serve as the sole survivor's first encountered enemies. However, despite the complete lack of maintenance for nearly 210 years, the vault's interior is in good condition compared to other abandoned fallen vaults encountered in the Capital Wasteland, the Mojave Wasteland, and even some of the other vaults within the Commonwealth. There are a few fun facts to be noted in this vault if you take the time to meander around. For instance, Vault 111 is very small compared to other vaults and lacks many design features that are standard in other vaults. As dwellers were placed in cryogenic stasis, less space was needed for the additional supplies and amenities needed had the dwellers been awake. When opening the vault door, debris can be seen getting sucked towards the door, which seems to indicate a pressure imbalance. Vault 111 is one of 4 vaults to include cryogenic stasis pods, including Vault 96, 31, and Vault 4. The pods in 111 and 96 follow a different visual design than those in 31 and 4, suggesting a different engineering system helped render those pods. Or perhaps the game devs wanted to get creative. Speaking of devs, I also picked up on the fact that the cryogenic experiment for Vault 111 was first conceived by a dev that had worked on Fallout 3, 4, and 76, visited the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and saw a cryogenics lab with giant cryotanks in a side tunnel. He sent selfies to Todd Howard posing with them and described that this is the point where the story started to take a life of its own. Despite Vault 111 ultimately being a failure alongside countless other vaults, it sets the stage well for Fallout 4 and queuing up what would arguably be the best game in the series. And I say arguably because I know others will say 76 or New Vegas deserve that crown. Kidding on 76.
Enjoy your return to the surface, and thank you for choosing Vault Tech.
I'm off to Vault 112 to search for anything of bronze that might help me get this purifier up and running. All I know is that it's west of some place called Evergreen Mills, and it's well hidden in some sort of garage. But I'll find it. I have to. It's so close. But that's the story of Project Purity, isn't it? An eternity of almost theirs. Let's see if Braun has the missing puzzle piece.
Vault 112 is one of the last vaults to be constructed, and it's located underneath Smith Casey's garage in Fallout 3, just west of Evergreen Mills. Keep an eye out, there are some mole rats and rad roaches when nearing Vault 112, but it's nothing that can be dealt with. After proceeding past the counter and into the workshop, there's a large hatch in the floor just to the left. It can be opened by activating a switch on the wall beside it. Below it is a short passage that leads up to the Vault 112 blast door. Vault 112 houses an entrance similar to all the other vaults, which serves as the airlock decontamination area and the only connection to the outside world. A single passage in the entryway leads down to the main hall, which uniquely contains 12 Tranquility loungers plugged in and arranged in a large mainframe, each connected to a terminal which monitors the respective conditions of the subjects inside the loungers. There is also another Tranquility lounger found in the Overseer's office, located south of the main hall. Since it cannot be maintained by the human inhabitants as they're all in the Tranquility loungers, Vault 112 is instead maintained by a group of special caretaker robo-brains. The robo-brains are non-hostile, even if you attack them, as they also lack combat inhibitors. When the Lone Wanderer enters the vault, they're told that their arrival is 202 years behind schedule. Due to the indefinite duration of the Vault 112 experiment, the vault uses geothermal power exclusively. This is provided by a Sure Power geothermal unit and backed up by an extra Sure Power geothermal unit. The geothermal turbine level can't be accessed. A Think Machine 3600 mainframe is housed in the main hall. As well as performing the functions of a normal vault computer system, it functions as the simulation control computer, running the main simulation program and synchronizing all the different Tranquility loungers. It appears linked to several small computers, one handling each lounger's graphics processing and its occupant's medical status. The construction of 112 started in November 2068, the same year Vault 92's construction ended and finished in June 2074, which is the same year the United States forces invaded mainland China, despite claims of fighting a purely defensive war. It was intended for only 85 occupants, all suspended in a virtual reality world for the indefinite duration of the vault's experiment. The vault was built to house and tend to the needs of its overseer, Dr. Stanislaus Braun, creator of the Garden of Eden creation kit, aka the GECK. If you recall, Dr. Braun was a former member of the Vault-Tec Corporation. And if you also recall, the GECK is a terraforming device created by FutureTech, which is a division of Vault-Tec, so it makes sense how he got his hands on one of the world's most coveted devices. Within the vault, Braun installed a virtual reality simulator and Visiontron loungers, initially containing several simulated utopias, the last of which is the Tranquility Lane simulation, an ideal pre-war American suburb neighborhood, where Braun himself appears as a young girl named Betty. Kind of weird if you ask me. The system should have permitted a select few to live a perfect life virtually, if not practically forever. As Betty, however, Braun can freely alternate between speaking like a preteen girl or his normal accented voice in this virtual realm.
Yay, I knew you could do it!
Perhaps not the most inventive approach, but persuasion can be quite powerful. Well done.
Most of the residents of Tranquility Lane are unaware of Betty's nature, though a trapped resident named Timmy at least knows that she's mean. Old Lady Dithers is the only person fully aware of the simulation and Betty's real identity due to her lounger suffering a malfunction, though she's still unable to escape this fictitious utopia like the others. She was though able to learn of the existence of Braun's failsafe and its ability to end the simulation for good, yet everyone around her thinks she's nuts. And why wouldn't they? Would you believe an old lady next door telling you your life was a lie and that you're really just linked up to a lounger? What most of Vault 112's occupants didn't know was that once they entered the virtual reality pods, Braun would exercise complete control over the simulation. They had no means of leaving on their own. They became his playthings, completely at his mercy. Dr. Braun, after becoming bored with various simulated worlds, would proceed to virtually kill each of them. Each time after killing them, he would wipe their memory and resurrect them within the program. For the past 2 centuries, Braun has been repeatedly creating and exploring new simulated worlds. At least 3 of these, which were Toucan Lagoon, Slalom Chalet, and Tranquility Lane. However, he used his special access as its creator to directly manipulate the simulations to impose cruelty and agony on the Vault's inhabitants, as a means of alleviating his boredom. In his psychopathic hubris, Braun commissioned the inclusion of a Chinese invasion program, loaned and sourced from Virtual Strategic Solutions, in-house Anchorage reclamation simulation by General Chase, intending to use it as a means to permanently end the simulation once he was finished with his experiments. However, Braun discovered that while initiating the program called the Failsafe, it would result in the permanent deaths of the simulation's inhabitants. Hard-coded safety protocols would not allow the program to end his life, in all likelihood leaving him isolated and alone in a simulated world. By 2277, Braun and the captive Vault dwellers have been kept in their loungers for over 200 years, sustained by their life support machines to the point that Braun believes if any of them, himself included, tried to return to the real world, they would crumble to dust. Part of this belief is based on science, and the other is based on ignorance. After all, why would he want to return to a hellscape when he can continue to play God in his personal utopia? A little-known wasteland doctor, James, entered Vault 112 looking for the Gek, brought there on Braun's orders before the war, in order to use it as a jumpstart to Project Purity, which was a water purification project in 2278. Having expected to find old notes or data stores instead of the man himself still alive, James unwittingly entered an unoccupied lounger and was trapped in Tranquility Lane, where he was forced by Braun to play the part of a dog named Doc. A short time later, James's child, the Lone Wanderer, aka You, enter the vault as well, trying to find him. We find ourselves entering an unoccupied lounger and meeting Braun as Betty. She asks us to commit a series of heinous acts like making a child cry, breaking apart a loving marriage, all culminating in going on a killing spree of all the inhabitants, all to continue entertaining him. The Lone Wanderer either complies with Braun's requests and is eventually allowed to leave along with James while the others are left trapped at Braun's mercy, or they discover and activate the failsafe, ending the inhabitants' tormented lives and leaving Braun trapped by himself in the simulation.
Do you realize what you've done? You've triggered the failsafe, ruined everything. The subjects will die and I'll be stuck here in this hell alone.
You ruined everything! Everything!
Because of 112 being maintained by the Robo-Brains and being better hidden than many of the other vaults, 112 is the only intact vault other than 101 in the Capital Wasteland. The outcome of this particular experiment is ambiguous. If Braun intended the simulator merely to satisfy sadistic urges when he designed it, then it fulfilled its purpose completely. If, on the other hand, he sincerely intended to create a virtual haven for the residents to live eternally, the fact that his godlike position subsequently drove him insane and made the other residents' existence an eternal hell. That would mean that the experiment was a failure. If you enjoy the plot of this vault, I would recommend watching Black Mirror episode titled USS Callister, as both the game and the episode revolve around narcissistic antagonists taking out their frustrations on innocent bystanders, with the plot being get out alive or live in an infinite hell of the narcissist's design.